Hello and welcome to today's daily news analysis. So today is 24th of Jan 2022 and we are covering the Hindu newspaper's Delhi edition. Now as part of our initiative, I make it a point to share questions for mains answer writing practice. So today we'll be discussing namely 3 questions in detail. So German Navy chief quits over remarks at Delhi event. So here we are not really concerned about the remarks, but yes, the issue over which, the big issue, that is the Ukraine crisis that is going on, Ukraine-Russia. So we'll be discussing this from an Indian perspective. Then elephant corridors to be restored in South Bengal. So above and above elephant corridors, I'm concerned about wildlife corridors. And then solving the Sterlite problem. This was an opinion. And actually there was this big massive unrest that took place in 2018 May, and UPSC framed a question on the similar lines. So I'll be sharing the same question. This was a case study and I'll be telling you the approach to attempt such a question. Right. Now coming to the first news. So this is about Omicron in community transmission. I think we all know how fast this Omicron is spreading. So this remark is coming from an agency known as INSACOG. So this is basically, this you should know for prelims. So this is basically a consortium. It's a group of institutions, 38 laboratories in the country, which were created specifically to deal with the scientific knowledge that we need to deal with the COVID-19. COVID-19, when it came, we had very limited information. Even today, we have very limited information. We do not have adequate labs, we cannot allocate additional resources. So whatever we had, the best of the laboratories of a country, they were combined together as a consortium. So that is what they do basically, genome sequencing. They try to identify the new traits of the mutations, what will be the impact, and they give an input to the healthcare setup of our country. So this is what INSACOG has told us. Okay, now there are few more variants that have been in the news. So this is B16402 and BA2 lineage. So they are saying that these variants have been reported recently, but this is not a variant of concern. Variant of concern. That means that this disease, this virus mutant does not have the quality of immune escape, or it will not put a burden on our healthcare system. So this is not a variant of concerns. Now let me just elaborate this a bit more, this concept of variant of concern. There are various types of mutations. Mutations are always taking place endlessly. Now within these mutations that are taking place, some mutations may be identified more frequently. When genome sequencing is being done by laboratories, so these mutations would be focused upon, that these ones are more frequent as compared to others. So this would be taken into account as variant of interest. Fine, variant of interest. Now amongst these, there is a possibility, let's say this mutant has a possibility of putting additional pressure on the healthcare system, like the Delta variant that took place in April. So that becomes the variant of concern, because more focus has to be given to that particular variant. So this is how it goes basically, variant of interest and variant of concern. Not every mutation or mutant will be classified as a variant of concern, and same way for variant of interest. Next, we are coming on to the Ukraine issue, very, very important. So basically the German Navy chief had come to India on a diplomatic mission, and he was talking at the IDSA. IDSA is again very important for our preparation also. This is an agency that obviously does research on the defense related aspects. So there he was asked a question on the Ukraine issue, and given that he is from Europe, his views are important. So he said that, see, this is Russia is not going to do anything over here. They are not going to invade into Ukraine, and we should not worry much about it. So this controversy, this statement that he made didn't go well with the Ministry of Defense of Germany. There was a massive political row. Ukraine did not like the stance of Germany over there, because German Navy chief is saying this. So he had to tender his resignation. That's it. Now coming to the question that we are going to, the analysis on the Ukraine issue. See what is happening essentially with reference to Ukraine. There is a concern that Russia may invade into Ukraine. In fact, in the in the Cold War times, in fact before this also, Ukraine was part of the USSR. Right, USSR was Russia is also very big, but USSR was a very, very big thing. So within that, Ukraine was also there. So now this, because of the disintegration of the USSR, because of the conclusion of the Cold War, the Russia emerged, and many other countries, especially of the Eastern Europe, came out of the control of Russia or USSR. Now, with reference to Ukraine, especially post 2014, there has been a concern that Russia wants to invade into Ukraine. Right. And in fact, there was an invasion that took place around 2014, on 2013 and 2014, where Russia invaded into Ukraine, and this development was known as the War of Donbass. In fact, this region that you can see over here, this is the Donbass region. And this region has predominantly ethnic Russian population. So ethnic Russian people are located over here. So somewhere this population is sympathetic to the Russians. And Russian population also wants to have this territory back, because significant number of people are Russian people, ethnic Russians. Okay. So now there are basically two things. So when the War of Donbass had taken place, Russia acquired the island or the territory of Crimea, not Crimea, Crimea. So they acquired this territory. Now this Crimea is of geostrategic significance. It's geopolitically very, very important for Russia as well as Europe. Think about it. If you look at the map over here, Russia does not have an access to the Mediterranean Sea. So one point is this is the Mediterranean Sea, and this is the Sea of Azov. Right? This is the Sea of Azov, and this is the Black Sea, and then comes the Mediterranean Sea. So they do not have an access over here. And further, what complicates things for Russia is that Russia is in absolute north. It's very, very cold. So especially during the winter months, they are not able to ply their ships. They do not have ports that are operational, especially during the winter months. It's freezing cold. It is not navigable because of the icebergs and other things. But if they somehow get access to this area, then in that case, they will have all the 12 months, these ports, this water will be navigable. So this is very, very important for Russia. Plus, geopolitically speaking also, this provides them an access to the Mediterranean Sea. So access to Africa, access to Asia becomes much more easy. And in fact, if you go southwards over here, you will see the Red Sea. So this is very, very important. Right, so they acquired Crimea and they didn't return this. Okay, so we have this thing. Now what is happening is that what Russia wants is, there is a build-up of troops that is taking place. There is a build-up of Russian troops over here, and there is a concern that Russia may consider taking the entire Donbass region and secure the territory of Crimea. Makes sense, because if they do not have access to this territory over here, Crimea will be easily taken over again by Ukraine or any other place, any other country. They will again hand it over to Ukraine if Ukraine cannot directly fight Russia, and which is quite possible. Russia is too powerful as compared to Ukraine. So they want more control over this area and isolate Ukraine's access to Crimea. So that is maybe the phase one, that is speculation. Other thing could be that they want access, just cut it off thoroughly from the Black Sea region as well, Ukraine. So now they are completely secure. If this entire territory becomes Russia, they are completely secure against Ukraine's interest in Crimea. Secure, done. So this is one thing over here. The second thing is that there is a possibility of Ukrainian invasion, because Ukraine, if you see, it is very important for Russia. For one, anybody who has invaded into from Europe to Russia, anybody, be it Napoleon or any important king, so they have actually invaded via this region. They crossed the mountains they crossed the Carpathian Mountains and they invaded into Russia. They entered into Moscow. So any invasion that has taken place, all they have to do is they have to cross this barrier, they have to cross this mountain. On the physical map, it is very clear. And then comes the flat area. So now it becomes very easy for an invader and they enter into Russia. So what Russia would like is that they have this entire territory to itself, and if possible even control the mountains. Then it becomes very easy to defend Russia from any invader, especially European countries. Right? Personally speaking, I don't see a really imminent threat from Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, these countries actually entering into Russia from this direction. Anyways, but yes, this is a concern for them. And yes, the third point is the ethnicity of the people over here. So there is some sort of sensitivity towards these people amongst the Russian population, and likewise. And furthermore, the capital of Ukraine, Kyiv, it is believed that the Russian culture actually emerged from Kyiv and went eastwards into Russia, Moscow, etc. So this is a very important cultural hub which a Russian would actually like to take over. This is very, very significant for them in that sense. So these are certain issues with reference to Russia and Ukraine, why Russia would get into Ukraine. Okay, now coming back to 2014. When this issue took place, because we are looking at the recent political development. So one, you have the political development of the buildup of troops, right? We have the buildup of troops over here. And when we look at the buildup of troops, to evade the situation, especially when the war of Donbass had taken place, we had discussed in our earlier class. So when the war of Donbass had taken place, to resolve the situation, the European countries formed a pact with Russia. So this is known as Minsk Agreement. So this took place in 2014 to normalize the situation, and in 2015. So this is known as the Minsk Agreement. And this is basically, Minsk is the capital of Belarus, which is an ally of Russia. So Russia and Belarus are friends. In fact, talking about Belarus, one more thing comes to mind. There is also a possibility that Russia will have a buildup of troops in Belarus and try to invade into Ukraine from this direction. So they are good friends. Okay, so we have the Minsk Agreement, and so there is Belarus, there is Ukraine, Russia, and France and Germany. These are the two important countries who are concerned about the geopolitics of Europe. In 2015, a war seemed imminent, but it did not take place because of Minsk 2015 meeting that took place. Now, to overlook this issue and to avoid such a situation, another thing that was a recent meeting that had taken place, that is known as the Normandy format. So Normandy is a place in France, and it is a France-led initiative basically, where European countries are sitting together to see what is happening with Russia and Ukraine. Right, so we have the Normandy format over here. Right. Now coming back to the question, explain the recent political developments on Ukraine-Russia border and its impact on world politics with a special reference to India. So basically there are three things over here. So first one is the recent political developments on Ukraine-Russia border. So you can start your answer by telling us about the recent build-up and aspirations of Russia vis-a-vis Ukraine. Give a brief background and that's it. Now explain how This may snowball into a major political crisis. For instance, now there is a possibility that this would like to get into NATO. Ukraine has actually requested the NATO bloc, NATO countries, to integrate Ukraine into it, which is a front against Russia. So this is there. US has guaranteed some sort of a security to Kyiv. They are providing the military equipment, and also they have said that they are going to defend them against the Russian invasion. So this would again mean that we are entering, if this happens, we are entering into a Cold War like a situation, right? And war is anyways not good. So Cold War like situation that is there. And furthermore, if you remember, even talking from the significance of India also, from concerns for India, you know, when the 2014 incident had taken place, when the war of Donbass took place and they acquired Crimea, at that time, US imposed sanctions on Russia. Sanctions. And when US imposes sanctions on Russia, that means any country that has economic trade, some sort of relationship with the other country, which US deems as its enemy, then for them, anybody who goes against this sanction, even though it is from the US, if anybody goes against that sanction, action can be taken by US against that country. And this complicates the situation for India particularly, because when India was to buy missiles S-400 or any other defense deal, then US objects to it. Now, because of the pivot to Asia, because of US interest in China, they are a bit lax with us, but overall they are very, very strict on this front. So this complicates our relationship with US, Russia, as well as the European countries which we want to invest with, which we want to have good relations with. So this complicates the problem for us over here. I think you have adequate fodder points to write your answer within the 250 word limit. Right. Now moving on to the next topic. So only Indian tunes at beating retreat. So this is basically to do with the Republic Day when the parade takes place, and there is a function known as the beating retreat. This very small thing actually, where Mahatma Gandhi's, there is a song known as Abide with me. So this was Mahatma Gandhi's favorite and it has always been played. So now the Modi-led BJP government that is there, they said that see, we are ending this practice and only Indian origin or indigenous tunes would be played over here, right? And then there is some description about what all things will happen in the Republic Day. We all notice a parade takes place, the culture and heritage of a country is shown over here, and then more significantly the new combat dress of the armed forces will be revealed. This is important. Elephant corridors to be restored in South Bengal. I think let's just focus on the South Bengal thing and then we'll come to the question that I want to discuss. So basically, animals migrate. Animals migrate from one place to another and long distances they migrate. And if you watch the Discovery Channel or the National Geographic, you will see that the animals are actually migrating from one place to another. Now this could be for food, like for these animals, they are grazing animals. So they would be grazing for grass, of food basically, availability of water that varies from season to season. So they keep moving from one place to another and they have a fixed traditional path along which they migrate, or they have a well-defined circuit. Now what has happened is because of the development, if you look at the map of India also, most of this territory must have been forest area. Now because of development, because of land being converted into farms, so this forest was destroyed, this habitat of animals was destroyed, and therefore we have national parks, wildlife sanctuaries in limited pockets of the country. Now before animals could move, they migrated from one place to another and then came back. But because of the developmental work activities taking place, these paths, these corridors through which the animals migrated from one place to another, that has been affected. Naturally, if farming is taking place, the forest must have been destroyed, somebody must have created fence also. So this created problem. Now here in this reference, we are just talking about South Bengal and East Elephant Corridor. So only with reference to the various forests of Bengal that is there, that they are patchy, they are fragmented because of the developmental activities. The forests are located in silos. There is one forest there, the other forest is there, like that. So this has affected the possibility of free movement of the animals. So as a result of this, naturally animals would intrude into the places where human beings are living, they are settled. Sometimes they may enter into the farms of the places. Sometimes there is tensions because of that, and animal abuse also takes place. So here firecrackers are being taken and the animal is injured, as you can see. Here there are people also, you can see, notice. So man-animal conflict takes place. Sometimes animals also get very angry and they attack the human beings. So from 2014 to 2019, and you are required to jot down these points, by the way. So between 2014 to 19, 2,381 human deaths have taken place. Sometimes the district magistrate, when they know that, okay, the animals are going to migrate, there is a fixed pattern to it. So at times, the district administration passes prohibitory orders at that point of time. So it sometimes results in law and order situation. Sometimes people are in this mood, they are angry. So then again, law and order situation emerges. Right? Destruction of farms takes place, destruction of crops takes place. So these are certain concerns over here. Okay, so this is there, and furthermore it also leads to destruction of the biodiversity of the region. I'll explain later. Okay, so this is there. So because of now just from the article, because of the increased agricultural activities, and one more thing that is being referred to as destruction of the corridors is the participatory joint forest management system, such as community forestry. I want to explain this concept actually. So we have this forest services, we have a government machinery that is dedicated to conservation of the forest. So what was felt was that there was a gap between the people who are governing, the government, and the people, the local inhabitants. So what if, the idea of a joint forest management, community forestry is that government and the people, the native people who are well aware of the geography and who are well adept to the wildlife and other things, so they work together. So there is a spirit of cooperation over there. So the idea was that this will lead to sustainable development, this will lead to gains to the local population as well in a sustainable manner. But what is happening is, because of this community forestry, etc., the focus is too much on the economic side. There is more economic exploitation, and it is affecting the more human presence also in the wildlife areas, and therefore it is leading to more man-animal conflicts. So as a result of this, inspired from the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, a five-year restoration program has been started in South Bengal. So what all have we studied over here now? We have studied about the concept of wildlife corridors in brief. Then we discussed about the man-animal conflict that is taking place and the concept of community forestry. Right. Now, few things that are still left is pachyderms. It is pachyderms. Pachyderms. Right? If I just write this in Hindi, pachy. So these are basically a class of animals which have a thick skin. They are huge, they have thick skin, and these include elephant, rhino and hippopotamus. So these are known as pachyderms, again something that you need to know for your prelims. Now coming to the question over here, what are wildlife corridors? Bring out the concerns brought about by the destruction of these corridors and suggest suitable measures. So you know what are wildlife corridors? Here is the content. If you want, you can take it up from here. So these are area of habitat connecting wildlife populations separated by human activities or structures, right? So these are passages, basically like something like this. Now this is a man-made creation. So there was a wildlife corridor under which now road was to be made. So they they created this structure over here. They created this duct-like structure where cars could go without hampering the corridor. So this is an example of a wildlife corridor created by man. So these are area of habitat connecting wildlife population, right, through which the wildlife travels. Bring out the concerns brought about by the destruction of these corridors. I think you can briefly state the reason for this destruction of the corridors, right? Because of more human activities, anthropogenic activities, this is taking place, and the concerns associated with it. Man-animal conflict is taking place, destruction of the economic interests, destruction of crops, farms, man-animal abuse, law and order situations. So these issues can be mentioned easily. And suggest suitable measures, right? Simple. So suitable measures is something that you need to know. So something like this can be created, duct-like structures or new highway projects that are coming up. They can create this corridor, artificial corridors as well, keeping in mind which are the corridors, so they are not disturbed. At the same time, human activities go on unperturbed. Okay, but for this you need to have an assessment, scientific assessment, which all are the corridors. So surveys have to be done, right? According to the survey, then you can make the infrastructure or engineering works that are required to have those corridors over here. Focus should be done on creation of buffer area, so that they don't enter into this is one example, but let's say there was a wildlife corridor area, right? So this is the corridor. So along this area, some buffer should be there so that the animals have the possibility of encroaching into outside the corridor, but still not enter into the human regions. So these are certain things you can mention over here. I refer to the PIB, didn't get much actually. There was basically references of some highways which have created such corridors. None of the ones on the Google or by the government also are actually images of India. Madhya Pradesh, lot of work is being done on these lines. Right. Now coming to the prelims point of view, thinking from that perspective, conservation measures for elephants. So first of all, I hope you remember this, elephants come under the Wildlife Protection Act. They are a protected species and they are protected under Schedule 1. We referred to Miss Kerala earlier. They have been put under Schedule 1 and there was a suggestion that it should come under Schedule 4. Remember Miss Kerala? It's a fish, ornamental fish. So it is highly protected by the government, the Ministry of Environment, Wildlife Protection Act. If somebody indulges in poaching of the elephant, especially for their ivory, for their teeth, then in that case they will be punished. And to preserve the population of elephant, Project Elephant was initiated as a centrally sponsored scheme. Centrally sponsored scheme basically means that the central government is providing funding and sharing the responsibility with the state government, right? That is basically centrally sponsored scheme where both center and states are involved. States are also providing funding, normally in the ratio of 60-40, 50-50 like that. Then there is World Elephant Day to create awareness about the need to conserve elephants. So this is on August 12th. Then there is Gaj Yatra, Gaj again elephant, Gaj Yatra, a nationwide awareness campaign. And there is an international program. These are very important for prelims. So MIKE, which was launched in 2003. It basically stands for monitoring the illegal killing of elephants. In which regions? Across Africa and Asia, the places where elephants are actively found. Now we come to the IAS rules, the changes that have been taking place with reference to the cadre rules, and I think I'll just briefly explain again and then we'll move on to the objections that have been expressed by the states. So basically what happens is IAS officer, IPS officer, these are all India state services. So these are basically, these positions, these officers are basically appointed by UPSC, they are appointed by the president, center, and they are deputed to a particular state cadre. Most of the career they spend in their respective states. Now sometimes, apart maybe 1/3 of their service, they are to be released from the state and they again go back to the center. They are on central deputation. We have this Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Environment, and so many other. So they have IAS officers, they have IPS officers. And if you read about them, they are belonging to a particular state cadre. That means a state actually released those officers. Now what has happened is, center is saying that the states are not releasing officers on central deputation. They are not sending their officers over here when the center is requesting. So now they have come up with IAS Cadre rules. They have made some changes to the IAS Cadre rules where the permission of the state is not required. Not required at all. Center says the person has to go there. As simple as that. So naturally, the state administration, the state political heads, they are against this move. They are opposing this, particularly people who are particularly from the states which are non-BJP. So here we have with reference to M.K. Stalin and with reference to Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So Mr. Stalin is saying that this is not a right approach, and these views are important to be taken into consideration. This is not the right approach. Ideal thing would have been, when you have such a problem, have a consultative mechanism. Take the states on board. Here, such move has been made by the center without taking states into confidence. Remember, the services, all India state services. So there is a federal aspect over here, and therefore states should be taken into account. So such thing goes against the spirit of cooperative federalism, where the center and states work in a cooperative manner. This is very important for your GS2 governance. Okay. So what he suggested is that this, rather than this approach, what they could have done was they could have created some sort of an empanelment system. A transparent system could have been created, which is free from the influence of, which is neutral basically, free from the influence of the state or the center, and they decide which officer goes where. And maybe the officer in the state can voluntarily also apply. So that should have been the approach over here. Likewise, Kerala CM also has said that this is not a right approach. This may create problems. Same points are there. He's saying that it may create a fair psychosis, especially amongst the IAS officers of the state. Let's say a particular person is implementing a scheme of the state government which is not liked by the center. Then in that case, maybe that officer would not like to implement the scheme or would do that with an element of fear. That action may be taken by the center. That protection is not there. So this is a problem. It may also lead to it may also lead to this is just an idea, contemplating an idea, that there is now more control of the state's higher bureaucracy, that is IAS or IPS, that more influence of center would be there on them. This again goes against the spirit of federalism. So here again he says it goes against the very root of cooperative federalism. And one interesting observation he says is that even though we have this, in the Indian system, it is not that the states are below the center. States are not below the center. They are equal. And this is what Mr. B.R. Ambedkar had also said. That in Indian parlance, the states are the state machinery is a political class is elected by the people, and the same people elect the government of the center. At the same time, it is the constitution which devolves power to the state and the center according to the 7th schedule. So both are equal. Yes, some extra power has been given. India's polity is quasi-federal, but by and large, state and center are at a level playing field. So that should be ensured, and the spirit should be there, and the spirit is basically cooperative federalism. Again, very important, Statue of Equality gets final touches. And Statue of Equality is being created to honor Sri Ramanuja's statue. So Sri Ramanujacharya, a very famous Bhakti saint from Tamil Nadu. So to honor, again a Vaishnavite saint, so to honor him and honor the birth anniversary, 1000 years birth anniversary, this statue will be unveiled. So the statue will be known as the Statue of Equality. This is being imported from Aerospun Corporation in China. This will be taken from there. And this temple, this obviously this will be in a temple. So this will be located in an ashram, 40-acre ashram of Sri Tridandi Chinna Jir Swami in Muchintal, Hyderabad. So this is basically Hyderabad, and this place will be known as this ashram Sri Ram Nagar. Right, so this is, you know, the person associated. I'll tell you more about him. So Statue of Equality, it is in Hyderabad. He was a Vaishnavite saint, and this place is Sri Ram Nagar. Now this place will have 108 Divya Desams. These are basically important temples according to the Vaishnavite Alwar tradition. Alwar was basically, there were two sects in South. So Alwar and Nayanars. So Alwars were the believers of, they were Vaishnavites, they were the believers of Lord Vishnu, and Nayanars were believers of Lord Shiva. So they were Shaivites. So 108 Divya Desams. So these are important temples. So their models would be, they are in different places, but their model will be placed in this, around this vicinity of this statue. I hope you get this. This is, this is explained in 7th NCERT also. And by the way, Alwars also composed something, they composed a very holy text known as Divya Prabandhan, and it is given equivalent significance as the Vedas are given in the north. So sometimes it is also referred to as the 5th Veda. Okay. Now, what really I was thinking about it was, why is it called the Statue of Equality? This is something that I was really thinking about it. We will have more when we come in, when Prime Minister Modi is inaugurating this. I think this is February 4th. It will be now February 5. So when this comes. But we have to know as to why is it called the Statue of Equality. We need to know about the philosophy of Sri Ramanujacharya. And to know Sri Ramanujacharya's philosophy, which is, he was basically a Vedantist saint, and he was a believer of Vishishta Dvaita. Right, so this is the philosophy. So we need to know about this now. And to know this, we need to know one more saint, because a comparison can be asked between these two saints. Sri Shankaracharya, who was a philosopher of Advaita. Sri Shankaracharya, not talking about Sri Ramanujacharya for the time being. So, because Vishishta Dvaita, I want to explain what is this and how can we link it with equality. So, for this we need to know about the philosophy of Shankaracharya, which is Advaita. Advaita means monism, and Vishishta Dvaita means qualified monism. That is why I want to explain what is Advaita first. So Shankaracharya, Shankaracharya was a Shaivite saint, and I think from name also you can relate Shankaracharya. Okay, so Shankaracharya was at a time period when Hindu religion was being attacked by most prominently Buddhism, Jainism. Right, there was a problem, and there was a concern about a lack of integration between north and south, east and west of India. So Shankaracharya, he came up with the philosophy. He engaged in various debates and defeated the other people from the other religion sects. He defeated them in their debates, and he ensured the primacy of the Hindu religion. And furthermore, he said, Jagat Mitya Brahm Satya. Jagat Mitya Brahm, sometimes referred to as Brahman, Brahm Satya. So it means that the entire world is an illusion and only thing true is the Brahma or the Supreme Being. Jagat, Mitya, world, Jagat is an illusion, Mitya, illusion. Brahma is the Satya. That is the only truth. Brahma means here Supreme Being. And somehow in the Hindu religion also there were, people of, there are different gods, there are different deities. So he says, okay, fine, you have these deities, you worship those deities. But ultimately you are coming under one umbrella God, that is one Supreme Being, that is Brahma. So this you can see, it is putting everybody in a single umbrella. Again, some aspect of equality is coming into here. And further he's saying that the Supreme Being is the same in all of us over here. So Jagat Mitya Brahm Satya. So see, in a way everybody is equal because in every one of us we have Brahma. So that is equality over here. But the problem arises that he says that to know this, that the world is an illusion and only truth is Brahma, To know this, we need to have Gyan, we need to have the awareness. So Gyan mark is required. And according to obviously because of the caste problem that we have, the knowledge or the access to the Vedas, it is not available to the women and the people from the lower caste, so that was a problem. And Vedas are the true source of knowledge, so the Gyan mark was limited to certain people only, people from the higher caste. So this was problematic. Ramanujacharya said, who was a Vaishnavite saint, he came up with the philosophy of Vishishta Dvaita. He said that the world is there. Yes, world is also there. It is not merely an illusion. But ultimately, only Brahma is Satya, or only the Supreme Being is true. And he said that, we don't have to rely on the Gyan mark. All we need to do is bhakti. Everybody is equal, and all we need is a devotion to a particular deity or God. So if you can see over here, it again says everybody is equal, but the constraint of Gyan Marga has been reduced. So I would relate to equality in that sense over here. Right. Okay, so we're done with this thing. Now coming to two opinions that we have, and this is the one that I'm more concerned. Okay, so budgeting for the education emergency. Basically here two things are there for us, but yes, budgeting for the education emergency. So first thing is, what the author is saying is that because of the COVID-19 situation that we had, and large number of students who lost out because of the lack of digital resources that are there, because the schools were closed. So for that purpose, the government, now the budget is coming up, so government needs to spend more money. In fact, in any case, various recommendations have said that the government should focus on increasing the budgetary outlay, should double it. So from 3%, it should increase it to 6%. So this has anyways in a country has been on the lower side. So they should increase the budgetary outlay. So Kothari Commission, new education policy, name it. Everybody has actually tried to double the existing budget over here. Now further she's saying that budget alone will not do. The focus has to be on bringing back the students to the system. So bridge the learning gap that is there. Learning gap, the people have lost out on the skills because the schools were closed. So whatever they learned, they have forgotten that. So we have to bridge the learning gap, because there were certain, especially in the urban environment, where the children were benefiting from the middle income group and the upper income, of course. So they were benefiting. So that we need to increase the learning gap. We need to invest in teacher training. We need to emphasize on the digital education, and also focus on the nutritional side, like midday meal scheme and other things. So the nutritional loss, because children, when they were going to school, they were getting good nutrition also. That was an incentive to come to school. So that again needs to be brought into picture. Now, because of the last year, because of the government not having adequate money, the budgetary outlay to education had come down. Right? So this is one issue that she is saying over here. The other thing is, she's saying that she's bringing out a problem with respect to India's education budget, is that we have very limited knowledge of what is happening with the money. For one, we have that, okay, we know that, the recommended expenditure with UNESCO has recommended that for a country like India, the budgetary outlay should be of 15 to 20%. Budgetary outlay, that is the government spending. So if the government has 100 rupees, so of this 15 to 20 rupees should go to education. One is this. The other, you may be thinking that I refer to the 3% of spending that is there. That is 3% of the GDP. Here 15 to 20% I'm saying is with respect to government's budget. Whatever the government is spending, of that 15 to 20%. So that she's saying it should be 15 to 20% and around 4 to 6% of GDP. I hope this thing is clear. Okay, so this needs to be high, and if we look at in India's context, it is around 14% of the GDP, which is comparable, but yes, it is still less given the fact that India's population, even if you look at the lower countries that are poorer than India, they are also spending more than us. and we are less than that, but we are comparable to this figure over here. Not this, because we were at 2.5 to 3% of the GDP, but still we are comparable. But given that large number of, we have a demographic dividend where we have more youthful population. Because we have more number of people, we should be actually spending more money as compared to other countries. So these countries, Indonesia and other countries, they have already experienced demographic dividend. So India's case, we have to spend more on the youthful population. So this money should actually increase. So one is this. Other thing she's saying is that we do not know, we get to know, okay, fine, this much money is there, but all is rough estimate. We don't know the composition of that spending. Where is that money going? We do not have that. We don't really know what is the contribution of the state vis-a-vis the central government. We don't know what is the priority area of that spending. Is it going in creation of infrastructure? Is it going in creating the manpower resources with respect to education, which is important? Is it going for midday meal scheme? We don't have the clear picture over there. What is the contribution of Ministry of Education vis-a-vis other ministries? So she is saying that most of the contribution that is coming from Ministry of Science or any other department. If you look at education, primarily elementary education, that is the sole responsibility of Ministry of Education. If Ministry of Science is spending, that means higher education. So that is not very inclusive, right? It is not very inclusive. We need to look at that aspect. So we cannot combine all the picture, all the facts together. So that doesn't give us a clear picture. So yes, again, one more thing. How much are we spending on primary education, secondary education and higher education? More money, more allocation should be on primary education. So these are certain things that are not clear, and given the data that we are in the data economy, we have so much information of so many things, so much factors there. But still we do not have this data as to what is the government doing. So this is very problematic in India's context. Right. Okay, there were other opinions also, editorials and opinions I didn't cover because we have covered it in the news earlier. This is important, and this is the case study that I want to share with you. So trust deficit between Vedanta and the people of Thoothukudi needs to be bridged if the smelter has to restart. Let me explain. In May 2018, there was a massive protest in Thoothukudi. Massive protest against the Vedanta company, which is Vedanta's Sterlite company, which basically smelts copper. That is, it makes it gets the copper ores, bauxite. From that it makes copper, right? And that copper is ultimately that is important for our wiring and the wiring that is taking place, or it is being exported to other countries. Okay. Now the problem was that this protest took place in 2018, but ever since this company was there in this place, Thoothukudi, so for about 20 years, 2 decades, people had a problem with this. For one, they are saying that it led to more pollution, right? There was more pollution, there was excessive emissions, the air over there was not breathable, there was foul smell. So imagine if a company of like this in nature is there around your locality and you will have a problem. You want the company to abide by the regulations, not pollute. This company was releasing, what do you say this? They were also emitting the water, the waste that is there from the refining. It was being discharged untreated. So this was a problem. The groundwater was getting bad because of this. So they are saying that even the animals or the cattle was not having the groundwater. So this was having a problem on the local people over here. Government, again, we see that the government's role over here was also very bad. Government was not able to enforce for 20 years. Right? So we see some sort of an excess over here for sure. So because of this, massive protests had taken place. It says 13 people died, but there were a lot more than this actually. So because of this, ultimately the state government, Tamil Nadu government, decided to close down this plant. Clear? Done. The plant is closed. So now, obviously, this plant is of a strategic significance for the country. Also for the region also we can say, because large number of people because of this lost their jobs. Number of people were employed who were working over there, so they lost their jobs. We need the copper because from country's point of view, because copper is strategically important. Today we want to move toward the EV technology, electric vehicles. We are looking at the renewables. So we are going to need more wiring. Copper is required for the wiring things. And we do not have adequate copper in the country anyways. And then we have been exporting the copper also. So the ports from which the copper was getting exported, those ports are not functioning very well. They are falling into debt because they are not getting revenue. So these are certain concerns because of the closure that we can see over here. And yes, obviously the copper is getting imported. So this is again a matter of concern. Right, so we have done the issue over here, and then the concerns for the country. Now what he's saying is that we need to find a solution to this problem. And this problem can be solved if we can bring the company and the people together. There is a harmony over here. Some sort of a framework is created where there is a win-win situation. I'll explain this more. Actually, this is not adequate for you guys. So I'll explain more pointers with you. So, but before this, please read the case study. And I've never discussed the case study before you. And I think this, if we are able to do this, you will get a better insight as to how UPSC is asking us questions. Okay. So same situation is there, right? Here there is a reference of manufacturing industrial chemicals. There we had copper. This unit was set up 10 years, there 20 years ago. They were discharging industrial effluents affecting the land, water and crops in the area. Same problem over here. There was a series of agitations and ultimately the police was not able to control, deaths took place, and ultimately the government ordered the closure. This resulted in unemployment, it affected the industry, all those points are mentioned over here. Now this is the question. Now as a senior officer, imagine you are a very senior officer, you are entrusted with the responsibility of handling this issue. How are you going to address it? Right? Now the industry is also closed, now what will you do so that the problem can be resolved? How will you approach now? Think about it, this thing, and how will you write the case study also? Now see, you have to give out a set of recommendations or set of actions that need to be taken. This is very clear from the question. But to be able to write down the actions, right, in ethics, remember one thing, ethics case study or the theory, justifications are very, very important, justifications of your actions. So here when you're writing your points, first of all, you have to establish the context. So you have to establish the facts of the case. Briefly, you have to write it in your own words, the facts of the case, so that you are able to define the problem, something more than what is asked in the question, because this reflects certain problems with the governance. This reflects certain problems in the way the government dealt with the problem over here, the agitation that took place. You have to read between the lines and you have to explain this thing. So define the situation, define the problem over here, define the concerns of the various stakeholders. Right? For example, the rights of the people vis-a-vis the economic interest, then the significance of the copper, strategic significance, all the points actually listed over here. Then you come to the actions over here. Now here when you write down the actions, this action has to be in a logical manner. So first of all, it is very clear that decontamination has taken place. I am writing it here only. So decontamination is there. You can make out, it's not stated, but obviously that area has been polluted. So somewhere as an officer who is entrusted with this task, your first thing is that whatever this pollution is doing, it is harmful. So decontamination efforts have to be done, and this can only be done by scientific assessments. So this has to be done, right? Then the other thing is you have to identify why this compliance did not take place. Why did the company not comply with the norms? So this investigation has to be done. And also ensure that the company has adequate safeguards, adequate filtration system, whatever the effluents are going, so that the best practices are incorporated. Now try to establish talks with the different stakeholders, basically people and the company, people, government and company. So talks, and focus on confidence building measures. Some sort of confidence has to be built. People have been affected, people got killed in the process. Their experience over the 20 years was very bad. So confidence building measures. And what could they be? Some sort of a trust has to be built that the systems are being followed. The government will look into this issue, right? Those things have to be done. The company would be focusing on the welfare of the people. The local people will be employed. Here, local people were not getting employed. So local people will get employed. So all those things have to be, that guarantee has to be provided. And we also look into the aspect as to why so many deaths took place. Agitation took place. Not every time when the agitation takes place, people die. Open fire, police actually engaged in open firing. So there should be action against the police, and there should be training programs so that the police are better trained to deal with agitation like scenarios. And also focus on sensitivity training. So these are certain things that needs to be done to solve the problem. And above all, I think you can conclude by saying that there needs to be a framework for a solution that focus on adherence to norms. You can just write 2 lines on and conclude your answer over here. Right then. So this is all from my side in this brief daily news analysis. This is it. Thank you for streaming in to IASPrimers with me, Shubhashish Rehal. Bye bye, take care, and all the best.